Everyone thinks Tony Soprano is the monster, but Carmela? She's the real artist of denial and destruction. Carmela Soprano is often mistaken for the moral center of The Sopranos. Maybe it's the carefully coordinated cardigan sets, or the way she pronounces manicotti with such proud affectation. But upon closer inspection, Carmela is less a misunderstood victim of her circumstances and more a curated performance of virtue. A veneer of righteousness plastered over deep-rooted envy, hypocrisy, and a craving for unearned power. And nowhere is that more transparent than in her righteous fury over Tony's failure to threaten a building inspector on her behalf. Let's revisit this baffling moment of suburban tyranny. Carmela, who paid exactly $0 for her spec house project, funded entirely by Tony naturally, chose building materials so substandard they couldn't pass a basic safety inspection. Instead of accepting this predictable outcome with even a flicker of self-awareness, she demanded that Tony intimidate a public servant, possibly with death threats, because in Carmela's world, a failed inspection is equivalent to betrayal. And when Tony hesitated, she declared herself unloved. In what universe is this rational behavior? Ah, but this is Carmela, queen of the double standard. The same woman who bleeds piety from every pore while quietly manipulating every social connection she has to get what she wants. Need a teacher pressured into boosting AJ's grades? Done. Want a family friend to write a recommendation letter for Meadow despite her mediocre credentials? Just another day in the Soprano household. And when any of these schemes backfire, she retreats into the protective cocoon of martyrdom, bemoaning how her morality will always be called into question simply because she's married to Tony, as if she's never enjoyed the fruits of that blood-soaked union. It's not that Carmela is uniquely evil, but she is uniquely audacious in how she maintains a self-image entirely at odds with her actions. She marries into the mafia, enjoys every luxury that brings, and then weaponizes selective ignorance when the consequences become inconvenient. She's not Olivia Soprano, a tyrant in a housecoat, nor is she Charmaine Bucco, who chose dignity over complicity. Carmela is something altogether slipperier, a woman who wants the power and privilege of Tony's world without the responsibility or the moral burden. Even her re-entry into the marriage, after a brief and conveniently fruitless separation, is brokered like a real estate deal. She'll pretend Tony's endless cheating is behind them if he buys her a plot of land and bankrolls her dream home. When Tony predictably fails to meet even these basic terms, she flails, not because of heartbreak, but because her conditions weren't met. Carmela's idea of love is transactional. Her idea of independence is being able to boss contractors around without footing the bill. She's not a tragic housewife trapped in a mobster's web. She knew exactly what she was signing up for when Tony showed up on their early dates with envelopes of cash and armfuls of gifts. The moment she accepted that dynamic, she sealed her fate. Her ongoing moral hand-wringing, especially when she visits priests or dabbles in fleeting bouts of self-reflection, is little more than spiritual pageantry. Yet for all her performative guilt, Carmela's true nature is most clearly revealed not in grand acts of manipulation, but in the petty jealousies she barely bothers to hide. When Hunter, Meadow's childhood friend and former party girl, reveals she's in med school, Carmela's face collapses faster than the foundation of her spec house. What was supposed to be a gratifying moment of schadenfreude instead becomes a bitter pill. Her barely concealed disappointment is palpable, her feigned interest crumbling into a single dismissive yes before she changes the subject. The possibility that someone she wrote off as a wreck might now be more accomplished than Meadow, or herself, is unbearable. This dynamic repeats again and again. Carmela bristles when Angie Bonpensiero starts making real money post-widowhood, not because her Porsche is flashier, but because Angie did it alone, without a man, without dirty money, without asking permission. Carmela's brand of femininity depends on dependency. She isn't threatened by other women having more, she's threatened when they've earned it. And still, people rush to defend her as a battered housewife, someone trapped in a life she didn't choose. Nonsense. Carmela chose this life. She chose the cashmere, the granite countertops, the private school tuition. She chose to stay, time and time again. And yes, love makes people stupid. But love doesn't make you vindictive, greedy, or morally indignant when your schemes fall flat. That's a choice. Carmela makes it every day. Even her treatment of friends veers into sociopathy when threatened by comparison. Recall her passive-aggressive delight when Ginny Sacrimoni was on the verge of losing everything? The infamous "cayenne like the peppa" line, delivered with faux sweetness, is a masterclass in venom wrapped in pearls. Carmela smiles, but only because Ginny is suffering. A true friend wouldn't draw blood so delicately. Of course, it's easy to forget all this because Edie Falco performs the role so magnificently. Carmela is an exquisitely drawn character, complex, layered, often sympathetic, and at times even pitiable. But the brilliance of the performance should not be mistaken for innocence. The character's depth only enhances the tragedy of who she is. A woman who could have been something else, had she not decided that wealth was worth the price of self-delusion. Even when measured against Tony's psychopathy, Carmela's brand of self-righteous corruption holds its own. Tony may cheat, steal, and kill, but at least he doesn't pretend to be anything else. Carmela demands the moral high ground while standing ankle-deep in the same blood Tony spills. Her hands may be cleaner, but her conscience is just as stained. Carmela is not the most evil person in The Sopranos, but she is, perhaps, the most dangerously deluded. Her tragedy isn't that she was trapped, it's that she willingly stepped into the cage, asked for it to be gilded, and then wondered why the air smelled like rot. And that, in the end, is the most damning indictment of all.